Wouldn't it be nice to have several thought leaders in your industry know and love your brand? Start a podcast. Invite your industry's thought leaders to be guests on your show and start reaping the benefits of having a network full of industry influencers. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I am your host for today's episode, Nikki Ivy with Sweetfish Media. Guys, I've got with me today Ankur Goyal, who is the founder and CEO of Impira. Ankur, how you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming, guys. He really is doing really well. I'm looking at his face and he's smiling really big, and there's this positive energy that cannot be contained by my computer screen. So strap yourselves in. So we're going to be talking today about why some AI initiatives succeed and others fail. And Ankur is going to give us his insights there, and I can't wait to dig into that. But before we do, Ankur, I would love it if you would just give us all a little bit of background on yourself and what you and the folks at Impira are up to these days.
Absolutely. So I'm the founder and CEO of Impira, and at Impira, we're building software that uses AI to provide business intelligence for visual information, like photos, documents, and more. And, in a nutshell, as our world becomes increasingly digital, organizations are recognizing the importance of visual information, like, images, videos, documents, sound, etc. But prior to Impira, actually managing this stuff was a very burdensome task. And our product uses AI to not only help organizations manage visual data, but also extract intelligence out of it and impact the top line for their business. Before Impira, I was an early engineer and VP of engineering at MemSQL. And there we actually developed technology to help customers do similar things, but with structured data. And structured data is data that, fits into a spreadsheet or a traditional database. And as you and, the listeners know, getting photos and documents into a spreadsheet just doesn't work. And that's why I started Impira. Yeah.
I love it. So you guys you're doing the work that sort of keeps our day-to-day going, right?
Absolutely.
So some of the behind the scenes necessary stuff that folks who are not good at any of that stuff need and benefit from. So thanks for God's work out here. Before we really get into it, I kind of just want to at a high level talk about, given the hype around AI these days, what are some of your high-level recommendations for people who are trying to make sense of it all? Like, how do we know, like, what's real versus what's hype?
Absolutely. I think part of the reason for the hype is that AI actually has a massive impact in pretty much everyone's day-to-day life. I mean, we all use software like Google, maybe a little bit less Facebook nowadays, but Instagram, Pinterest, Google Maps, even Apple's software nowadays. And our experiences with the software are heavily powered by AI. Every time you click on a search result in Google, it learns a little bit about your preferences and it learns a little bit about itself. But the reality is this software just hasn't made its way into our work life. One of the most common things that we hear from our customers is that it's really easy to figure out who is in a photo on Facebook, but if they take a bunch of photos at an event, for example, it's impossible to actually figure out, all the pictures of a particular person or even label, who's in what picture. And so I think that's where the issue is with hype and reality. In the consumer world, it's present everywhere and it's been really successful. But in the enterprise world, it just it hasn't made its way there yet. And what we see is that this is primarily due to the way that the software is delivered. And I'm happy to talk about that in a little bit of detail. If you think about Google, for example, they have lots and lots of data about the entire internet. And every single time you search for something, they learn a little bit about you as well. And that's really great because the user interface is able to capture your energy and your attention and learn from you as a result. On the other hand, the software that enterprises tend to consume is usually driven by some kind of API. API means application programming interface. And when code is talking to, another company's code, not only do you lose out on the ability to learn from all of the data that, exists in an enterprise, but you actually lose on the API side how that data is used. And so, Nikki, as an example, if you are an API and I send you one picture from a party, it's going to be really hard for you to guess who's in that picture without looking at, maybe all the pictures at the party and what the guest list was, and maybe some prior information about people. And even if you guess and you tell me the answer and I maybe show it to someone inside of my company, if you're an API, I'm not going to tell you whether or not you got it right or wrong. And so you really don't have an opportunity to learn. And that's kind of where we see the big difference between enterprise and consumer.
Right, which ends up being the difference between the real and the hype, right?
Exactly.
The hype team tends to be what we engage with as consumers, and the real tends to be what we stand to be able to benefit from if we apply it as enterprises. I like the way that you laid that out. So once we get to this point where we understand the difference between we're able to discern the real from the hype, can you give us some examples of what a successful AI initiative looks like and how you know that?
Absolutely. So I think the number one most important thing is to have a feedback loop. And a feedback loop is one where the software is able to learn every single time someone engages with it about whether or not it made a valid or invalid guess. And I think there's some actually really good examples of this that are starting to pop up in the enterprise. One company that has been really successful in a totally different space is a company called Demisto, which is a security product that surfaces potential security threats to an internal security team. And actually, from how the security team learns and interacts with those anomalies, Demisto software is able to learn from those as well. And therefore, the next time it's able to provide a better recommendation. It's kind of like, Pandora provides a better music recommendation every time you give a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Yeah. And I won't get into why I'm still so loyal to Pandora. My kids call me old because they're like, "Why not Spotify?" I'm like, whatever, just let me do my thing. They give me the same hard time about Facebook, actually. They're like, only old people are on Facebook. And I'm like, whatever. Anyway, so yes, no, you're absolutely right that those are the sort of framework implications of what we still stand to see as far as the future of what enterprises are going to be doing with AI. And it's no wonder you're so excited about it. It's the frontier out here. There's so much yet to happen. It is an exciting time, a time to be alive, right? And so once we've gotten to this point where we're separating real from hype, we can recognize what a successful initiative is. What are some of your thoughts on some of the reasons why some initiatives succeed and some fail? And, are those sort of the things that are true for enterprise and direct-to-consumer companies?
Absolutely. I think, broadly speaking, in enterprise software, there are two kinds of initiatives that can succeed. One type of initiative is where you cut the bottom line. And another type of initiative is where you increase the top line. And in both cases, I think having an ROI understanding with your customer from the very beginning and working together actually on measuring things is the key to figuring out what's going to be successful and what's not. So I'll give you an example of each one. As it relates to the bottom line, one of the most common things that software like ours is able to help companies with is data entry. So there are a lot of tasks that extremely creative and intelligent people inside of companies are kind of bogged down with, which are, looking at images or PDFs and literally retyping what they see into a screen. And actually, most companies that we work with have a pretty good sense of how much time gets spent engaging in these tasks. And what we're able to do is work with those companies and work with the teams inside of these companies to understand, one, is it even feasible for artificial intelligence to be a good solution to this problem? The best question to ask when someone, wonders, can AI help, is how would a human do this? And if you can't piece together a good story for how a human would do it, it's actually going to be really hard for an algorithm to as well.
If the answer is a spreadsheet, then maybe AI is the answer, because it'd be harder for a human to do it.
No, that's a great point. I mean, one of my favorite examples of something that's hard for an algorithm to do is to look at a picture and identify what clothes or what SKU numbers someone is wearing. So that's something that we hear a lot about. And actually, it's something we help our customers with quite a bit, especially customers in retail and consumer packaged goods. And if you took a picture of me right now wearing this Patagonia and you asked me to look at it and say, what Patagonia sweatshirt is this? It would be really challenging for me to just look at the picture and figure that out. And similarly, it's really, really challenging to train an algorithm to actually solve that problem. On the other hand, if you took a picture of me and I had access to all of the photos you were shooting that day and what SKUs you were shooting that day and a bunch of the surrounding, maybe the label, which has some information about the product, all of these things are lying around a studio when you're shooting pictures of Patagonia sweatshirts. And actually, all of these clues can be fed into an artificial intelligence algorithm to figure out things, much, much, much more accurately. And so that's kind of the process we engage in, especially related to data entry, to figure out, A, whether this is a feasible problem to solve in the first place, and B, if we partner with our customer and solve it, how much time it's actually going to save their highly creative teams to work on much more meaningful things.
Imagine it, a spreadsheet filled with rows and rows of your sales enablement assets. You've devoted 2 years to organizing this masterpiece, only for it to stop making sense. This was Chad Trabucco's reality. As the head of sales enablement at Glint, a LinkedIn company, he's responsible for instilling confidence in his sales reps and arming them with the information they need to do their jobs. However, when his glorious spreadsheet became too complex, he realized he needed a new system. That's when Chad turned to Guru. With Guru, the knowledge you need to do your job finds you. Between Guru's web interface, Slack integration, mobile app, and browser extension, teams can easily search for verified knowledge without leaving their workflow. No more siloed or staled information. Guru acts as your single source of truth. For Chad, this meant Glint sales reps were left feeling more confident doing their jobs. See why leading companies like Glint, Shopify, Spotify, Slack, and more are using Guru for their knowledge management needs. Visit b2bgrowth.getguru.com to start your 30-day free trial and discover how knowledge management can empower your revenue teams.
Give us your top line tips for successfully implementing AI, just for the folks who are maybe just starting out in this and want to know how to start off on the right foot.
Absolutely. I think from the perspective of the vendor, it's very, very important that you have at least one person on your team who understands the technology. And when I say that, I mean someone with a background in statistics or machine learning who can help you figure out whether this problem that you're going to help a customer with is something that actually could be solved with artificial intelligence in the first place. The second thing, from the customer's perspective, is to make sure that you have a really good understanding of the process that goes into accomplishing a certain task. And that means what people actually have to do and how much time they spend on each task to actually get something from start to finish. And I think if you build out that map of the process and you partner with a company that has people that understand statistics, then it's a really straightforward process to understand how artificial intelligence technology can go in and solve your problem. And I think that not only is there a lot of off-the-shelf artificial intelligence software that can solve this problem, there's a very vibrant ecosystem of startups, including but not limited to Impira, that have different strengths and can help you solve different kinds of problems.
I love it. Absolutely. Thank you for laying that out. I think it's going to be super valuable for those listeners of ours who are wanting to dip their toe in the water the right way when it comes to an AI initiative. But now that I've successfully picked your brain and seen what I can get out of it, it is time for you to tell us about what you're putting in it. So Ankur, tell us about a learning resource that you have been engaging with that is informing your approach that's just got you excited these days.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing I've learned since starting the company is the importance of design in enterprise software nowadays. To be able to get good user feedback and make your model work really well, you have to build a user experience that really, really engages users. And actually, if you ask our customers why they bought our software, they don't say AI or database, this or that. They say user experience. So for me, I'm spending a lot of time learning as much as I can about design and user experience. We have a great team here at Impira, but it's something that's just really important. And there's a really great book called Sprint, How to Solve Big Problems and Test New Ideas in Just 5 Days. It was written by a few folks at Google Ventures, and it was recommended to me by Mercy, who was the director of product at Slack and ran their growth team, a while ago, and actually used that framework to help Slack in the early days.
I love it. I love when we get the book recommendation that I haven't heard of yet that I can go out and add to my Audible library.
It's amazing.
I can't wait. I know that just like me, everybody listening has become fast fans of yours, and they're going to want to know how to keep up with you. So tell us how people can connect with you.
Definitely. So we're on Twitter. You can reach out to us at Impira HQ. And you can also reach out to us over email. Feel free to reach out to info@impira.com, or you can reach out to me directly at my first name, Ankur, @impira.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter at ANKRGYL. So happy to connect with anyone who's interested.
Good stuff. Thank you so much. This enthusiasm that you brought to this conversation and the expertise. I'm really grateful for, and we'll have to have you on again because I got a lot more questions because this is something I know nothing about. And you, like I said, you made it nice and understandable for me. So until then, thank you so much. Have a good one, Ankur.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.